In this video, we will talk about the different types of sampling. But first, let us know the idea of the population and sample. Population is a set of similar items or events which is of interest for some question or experiment, whereas sampling is the process of choosing a representative sample from a target population and collecting data from that sample in order to understand something about the population as a whole. For example, your population are all San Beda students, but because you want to save money, time, and effort, you would just get 250 students as part of your respondents. A sample is either random or probability or non-random or non-probability. Random sampling. Every element in our population has an equal chance of being selected as part of the sample. To obtain unbiased results, it may sometimes be necessary to use weighting methods. Samples obtained under these conditions are also known as random samples. An example of a random sample would be the names of 25 employees being chosen out of a hat from a company of 250 employees. Non-random sampling. A sample in which the selection of units is based on factors other than random chance. Example, convenience, prior experience, or the judgment of the researcher. Example, a person might have a better chance of being chosen if they live closer to the researcher or have access to computer.
Under probability sampling, we have simple random, stratified, cluster, and systematic sampling. First is the simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is a basic type of sampling. Since it can be a component of other more complex sampling methods, the principle of simple random sampling is that every object has the same probability of being chosen. Simple random sampling is a sampling technique where every item in the population has an even chance and likelihood of being selected in the sample. Simple random sampling example. An organization has 500 employees. We want to extract a sample of 100 from them. Step 1. Make a list of all the employees working in the organization. Step 2. Assign a sequential number to each employee. Step 3. Figure out what your sample size is going to be. Step 4. Use a random number generator to select the sample, using your sampling frame from Step 2 and your sample size from Step 3.
Stratified sampling. In this method, the population is first divided into subgroups or stratas who all share a similar characteristics. It is used when we might reasonably expect the measurement of interest to vary between the different subgroups and we want to ensure representation from all the subgroups. For example, a researcher divided the sample of adults into subgroups or stratas by age, from 18 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 and above. To stratify the sample, the researcher will then select 3 individuals from each age range. Stratified sampling uses Levene's formula. Levene's formula is used to calculate the sample size given the population size and a margin of error. Using Levene's formula, you will be required to survey the population size over 1 plus population size times margin of error raised to 2 people. For example, suppose that you have 3,500 students from Centro Escolar Integrated School and you want to survey them to find out what is their favorite subject. You decide that you are happy with a margin of error of 5%. So 3,500, which is our population size, over 1 plus 3,500 times 0.05, which is our margin of error of 5% raised to 2 is equals to 359. So you are required to survey 359 students from CEIS and ask them their favorite subject.
Next is cluster sampling. Cluster sampling, or also known as one-stage cluster sampling, is a technique in which clusters of participants that represents the population are identified and included in the sample. The main aim of cluster sampling can be specified as cost reduction and increasing the level of efficiency of sampling. This technique can also be applied in integration with multi-stage sampling. The important thing to remember about this sampling technique is to give all the clusters equal chances of being selected. The most common cluster used in research is a geographical cluster. For example, a researcher wants to survey academic performance of high school students in the Philippines. First, he can divide the entire population or population of the Philippines into different clusters or cities. Then, the researcher select a number of clusters depending on his research through simple or systematic random sampling. Lastly, from the selected clusters or randomly selected cities, the researchers can either include all the high school students as subjects, or he can select a number of subjects from each cluster through simple or systematic random sampling.
Systematic sampling. It is a type of probability sampling method where sample members are randomly selected but according to a random starting point with a fixed periodic interval. The interval is also called sampling interval. It is calculated by dividing the population size by the desired sample size. This kind of sampling is very popular to researchers and analysts because it's simple. And it's because if sample sampling is too much consuming and inefficient, they will go directly to systematic sampling. Example, if you wanted to select a random group of 1,000 people from a population of 50,000 using systematic sampling, all the potential participants must be placed in a list and the starting point would be selected. Once the list is formed, every 50th person on the list, starting the count at the selected starting point, would be chosen as a participant.
Now, the following are types of non-probability: purposive and convenient sampling.
Purposive sampling, also known as judgmental, selective, or subjective sampling. It is a non-probability sample. This type of sampling is very useful in situations, especially when you need to reach a targeted sample quickly, because the sample is selected based on the characteristics of the population and the objective of the study. Example, SNP Company will be having an opera theater play for Christmas special. They will have an audition for the female leading role. Plenty of opera singers auditioned, but they only select opera singers who have soprano voice.
Convenient sampling.
Convenient sampling, or also known as accidental sampling, opportunity sampling, or grab sampling, is a type of non-probability sampling in which the subjects are selected because they are easily accessible for the research study. Convenient sampling saves time, effort, and money, but the results of it has high sampling errors due to biased samples or samples which do not represent a population. Example, using student volunteers known to researcher. Researcher can send a survey to students and they would act as sample in this situation.